Crybaby was my childhood nickname. If I was sad or even happy, tears weren't far behind. But God, I hated the angry tears. When I wanted to get my point across, but no one would take me seriously. My sister Giovanna was the main cause of my tears, whether it was her yelling at me to get out of her room or taking my things to get a rise out of me. She always knew what would make me cry. Giovanna was very cold and distant with me. Growing up with her was like walking on eggshells. If we got along, it was because she had something to gain. Once she got what she needed, it was back to ignoring me. It was transactional. We didn't hug, and we didn't say we loved each other. Our 6-year age gap wasn't drastic, but it meant we grew up worlds apart. Life was difficult for her and my mom before my dad came into their lives. My life was so gray, but it would light up when Stephanie, my paternal half-sister, came to visit. She was only a year older than me, so we felt like two peas in a pod, two halves that became whole. And when we separated, the feeling of longing returned. 7th grade spring break was when things got unpleasant. It was the last time Stephanie came to visit. The drive home from picking her up in Big Bear was spent giggling and whispering in the back seat. My dad smiled, watching us in the rearview mirror. We spent the 3-hour drive exchanging songs from bands we enjoyed. She understood me. I could share things with her freely without judgment. I found myself wishing she was the sibling I lived with full time. When we got home, we went straight to my room. I noticed something was off. The fun, light atmosphere from the car hadn't carried into the house. She put her stuff down on the floor and she gestured for me to sit with her on the bed. My eyes were drawn to her thighs, where multiple scars stood out against pale skin. I was aware of self-harm, cutting to be specific, but never had any real exposure to it. She caught me staring, my uncertainty clear. Do you want to know how I do it? I was caught off guard by the cadence in which she spoke. She sounded hollow and pained. I didn't know how to answer, but she didn't wait for a response. She pulled out a small box from her duffel, opening it to reveal a loose razor blade that she had pulled out an eyebrow razor. My breath caught in my throat as I watched her lower it. Before I could tell what was happening, she was drawing blood. The expression on her face was still, with no indication of pain, nothing. For her, it was routine. Red bloomed from where she'd just carved into her leg, right in front of me. Panic set in. What do? Can she bleed out from that? Should I tell someone? Do I tell Dad? Her hand on my shoulder startled me. Hey, are you okay? I looked up at her. The tears that had been threatening to spill down my face had finally rolled down. Her eyes were empty a moment ago, so the look on her of concern confused me. Why care now? It kickstarted a dark time, beginning my self-harm. I wasn't good at hiding it either. At 11, going on 12, my undeveloped frontal lobe combined with the feeling like I was grown. It was a recipe for disaster. I made it a couple of months before I was caught. With no access to blades, I took to carving my skin with the back of a Disneyland Tinkerbell pin, making my wounds large, jagged, and easy to recognize. My parents were devastated, with tears in their eyes as they asked me why I would do something like that to myself, shifting to frustration when I couldn't give them a proper answer. From then on, my parents did wrist checks at the door from the drive to school. I hadn't stopped, really, just moved locations. Maybe they knew that, but chose ignorance, not wanting to come to terms with the truth. For a while after, things went back to normal, and we settled into our routines, and I finished the 7th grade without getting caught again. In mid-8th grade, the big stuff happened. I had just turned 13, and I was being exposed to different things online in my bid to avoid reality. There, I became involved in queer spaces, learning more about myself and my sapphic desires. But I've been studying with Jehovah's Witnesses for the past 2 years, where being gay wasn't something people spoke about. Giovanna, pregnant at the time, was especially involved with the congregation. With so many things going on, I didn't know how to process anything, and it became insanely overwhelming. How could I even come to terms with my sexuality? How could I tell my family? I had a system. The self-harm would be my punishment. I'd get 3 lines for acting out, 5 lines for disappointing my parents, and 10 for thinking gay thoughts. I believed I could regulate it, offering myself some emotional release without going overboard and risking getting caught. My friends pushed for me to come out. We were all queer, and they believed letting go of this secret would ease my stress. It wasn't a bad idea to let go of some of the clutter in my mind. Without knowing how my parents would react, I made a plan. I had 2 friends I could stay with if things went south, and an emergency bag with essentials was packed. I shook as I knocked on my parents' door. Anxiety bubbled through my body, tingling in my hands. Tears were already welling up, and I hadn't even opened the door yet. ¿Qué pasó, mamita? My dad opened the door, and I immediately burst into tears. The sobbing caught my mother's attention. She moved to make space for me as my father guided me into the room to sit between them at the edge of the bed. My heart raced. My mother's usually comforting scent just made me more anxious. I need to tell you guys something. My voice shook. I tried to calm down, but to no avail. The tears continued to flow endlessly. Just breathe, mamita. It's okay. Take your time, my mother was saying as she rubbed my back. My dad stared at me with patient eyes, his hand on my shoulder. I wanted to run. The regret ate me alive, and I wanted to disappear. Why did I do this? This is a bad idea. God, I wish I hadn't said anything. I'm wasting my time by just sitting here. Why aren't the tears stopping? God, I wish they would stop. Why do I have to be such a goddamn crybaby? I'm so stupid. My head spun and my eyes burned, and I couldn't help but start shaking my leg, a nervous tic. My clammy hands gripped at my pants to try and keep them from shaking, and I couldn't hear anything but the pounding in my ears. And then it came out. I'm gay. My voice cracked, and my tears flowed more than ever. I thought they could. I went limp, and it was only a matter of seconds, but it felt like hours of silence as I waited for the response. It was terrifying, so all I could do was talk to fill it. Jumbled words and excuses stuttered out of my mouth. I tried to explain my fear of religion, my fear of rejection. Mamita, breathe. We're always going to love you, Nikki. No religion is going to keep me from loving my child. My mom spoke so softly, but her words made my lips quiver. Mi amor, siempre te vamos a querer. No quiero que pienses que la religión nos va a hacer dejar de amarte. Yo sinceramente creo que Dios te hizo en su imagen. The mention of God almost made my face sour, but it didn't go unnoticed. My dad elaborated. Dios te hizo en su imagen. Y si tú de verdad crees que eres bisexual, es por parte de él mismo. My body shook in their arms as they tried to soothe me. I finally felt like a child again, finding solace in my parents. The same people I was afraid would disown me, loved me, and embraced me wholeheartedly. I had heard so many horror stories of queer kids of color being rejected by their families. Their support grounded me and over time allowed me to lose the victim mentality I had developed. No matter what happened, I had loving parents waiting for me at home. Of course, it couldn't last long. My sister went to my parents' room to find out what the commotion was about. Why the fuck are you crying? There was no concern on her face, just amusement, and a teasing tone in her voice. My dad asked to talk to her outside. Her face contorted in confusion, sensing it was serious. My dad thought he could ease her into it in a more private setting, like the living room. As soon as the door shut, the screaming was immediate. Her words were hard to make out, but her outrage made it clear she wasn't supportive. Then the door swung open again. She made sure she looked me in the eye while she insulted me. Each one stung more than the last. It felt unreal, like a film happening to somebody else. Everything passed by in a haze. I couldn't process what was happening. It was just screaming, but no words. Nothing but erratic movements, arms flailing, my mom's voice rising, my dad holding my sister back as she tried to force herself into the room. It was all so fast. You're fucking disgusting. You're going to drag mom and dad to hell for your sin and making them support you. Her voice was cold, with true hatred in her words. I was in shock, her voice echoing in my mind. The screams continued, but I was lost in thought. Suddenly, I was in my room. My mom had walked me over, but I didn't process it until I made contact with my bed. She reached to tuck my hair behind my ear, but the tears welled up again. I bit my lips to try and stop the hiccups and squeezed my eyes shut to keep them from falling. My leg bounced up and down. My hands balled up into fists on my thighs. My mom wrapped her arms around me and held me to her chest. She was crying too. Her chest rose and fell against my head as she tried to keep herself calm. We didn't say anything, holding each other in an unspoken understanding. I fell asleep in her arms that night, her crybaby girl.